Aelara stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring out into the vast expanse of stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before her, glittering with distant suns and hidden worlds. But no matter how beautiful the cosmos looked, there was a hollow ache in her chest that no amount of starlight could fill. She had spent years believing that the human she loved, Ethan, had been lost forever. The reports had come in slowly, each one a confirmation of what she had dreaded, and she had tried to bury her grief beneath the duties of diplomacy, beneath the endless conferences, and beneath the busy life of the capital worlds. Yet, every time she saw a human face, every time she heard a human voice, she felt that familiar pang of longing. The memory of Ethan was still vivid, as if no time had passed. She remembered the first time she had met him during a diplomatic mission to a human settlement on a frontier planet. He had been different from anyone she had ever known. He was brave without being reckless, compassionate without being weak, and clever in a way that made her feel challenged and alive. They had laughed together under alien skies, shared quiet moments on lonely ships, and exchanged stories about their home worlds. She remembered the way his eyes would light up with curiosity, the way his hands would move as he spoke, and the way he had once held her hand and promised that no matter what happened, he would always find his way back to her. That promise had been shattered by war. The reports had said he was dead, caught in a sudden skirmish on a distant outpost, his ship destroyed beyond recognition. She had cried then, though only in private, letting her tears fall in the emptiness of her chambers. Over time, she had convinced herself that she had to move on. Her world needed her. Her people depended on her. Yet, deep inside, a small part of her refused to let go. A part that whispered that maybe, somehow, Ethan had survived. It was during a diplomatic summit on the star station Virel, orbiting a planet in the outer sectors, that she first heard a fragment of hope. She had been reviewing reports in a quiet corridor when a low conversation drifted toward her from a nearby alcove. Two alien merchants were speaking in hushed tones about a human who had survived an attack years ago and was now traveling among the outer colonies, helping settlements rebuild. At first, she thought it was impossible. She had heard similar rumors before and had learned not to trust them. But something in the way they spoke, the certainty in their voices, made her heart race. She stepped closer, trying to catch every word without revealing her presence. The merchants mentioned a few details that seemed oddly familiar. A human who had carried a small medallion from his homeworld, who had been skilled in both strategy and mechanics, and who had a quiet courage that inspired those around him. Aelara's breath caught in her throat. Every description matched Ethan. She had to know if it was really him. For days, she could think of nothing else. Her duties felt meaningless, her meetings dull and lifeless. She walked the halls of the station in a daze, barely noticing the alien delegates who bowed and spoke in formal greetings. Her mind was consumed with the possibility that Ethan was alive, that the one person she had thought lost forever might still exist somewhere in the galaxy. At night, she would look out at the stars, imagining him somewhere among them, surviving against all odds, and a part of her could not help but hope. Finally, she made a decision. Her council and advisors would have protested if they knew what she planned. They would have called it reckless, even foolish. But Aelara knew that she could not ignore this chance. She had to find him, no matter the risks. She spent hours studying the sparse data she had managed to gather, plotting a course to the outer colonies where the rumors had placed him. She secured a small, fast courier ship under the guise of a diplomatic errand, and stocked it with provisions for a journey that could take weeks. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and excitement. She had not traveled alone in years, not without the protection of her guards or the authority of her position. This would be dangerous. But the thought of finding Ethan made every risk worth taking. The journey began with a quiet hum of the ship's engines, and Aelara felt a strange sense of freedom. She had spent so long confined by rules, by expectations, and by the weight of grief. Now, she was following a thread of hope, a thread that might lead her to the one person who had changed her life. The stars streaked past the viewport as the ship leapt from one system to another, each jump bringing her closer to the unknown. During the voyage, Alara often found herself lost in memories. She remembered the first time Ethan had taught her how to navigate a human vessel, the way he had laughed at her mistakes, and the pride he had shown when she finally mastered it. She remembered the quiet evenings when they had shared stories about their homes, comparing the alien forests of her world with the rolling hills of his. She remembered the moment he had saved her from a minor accident during a diplomatic mission, his hands steady and sure, his eyes full of concern. Every memory was a thread, pulling her toward him, reminding her of the depth of her love. Days turned into nights, or at least as close to night as one could measure in the endless darkness of space. Alara encountered rogue traders and minor skirmishes with pirate scouts, but she navigated them with skill and caution. Driven by the thought of Ethan, each encounter reminded her of the survival skills he had taught her, and she found herself using tactics they had once practiced together. Her longing made her sharper, more aware, more determined than ever. Finally, after weeks of travel, she arrived at a small, remote colony on the edge of the galaxy. It was a rough place, built from salvaged materials, with settlers who had learned to survive on the fringes of civilization. Alara landed her ship discreetly, hiding it among the rocky cliffs that surrounded the settlement. Every step she took toward the colony was measured, cautious. She did not want to alarm anyone, and above all, she did not want to alert Ethan if he was truly here. As she moved through the settlement, she noticed signs of his presence almost immediately. A tool she recognized, left carelessly near a workshop. The faint outline of a human figure in the distance, moving with a familiar gait, a symbol carved into a wooden post that she remembered him making during their time together. Her heart raced. Could it really be him? After all these years? She paused, taking a deep breath, her emotions a mixture of fear, hope, and anticipation. Then, she saw him. Ethan was there. Alive. Stronger than she remembered. Yet with the same warmth in his eyes, the same quiet determination. He was speaking to a small group of settlers, giving advice, helping repair structures, moving with ease despite the harsh environment. For a moment, Alara could not breathe. She felt a wave of emotion so strong that it left her momentarily paralyzed. The human she had loved, thought lost forever, was standing right there, alive, and she could hardly believe it. Tears welled in her eyes as she watched him, and she felt a part of herself that she had thought dead awaken. All the pain, all the loss, all the years spent in silence, seemed to melt away. The journey, the risks, the long months of searching, they all mattered because this moment was real. Ethan was alive. He was there. And she was here. Alara stepped closer, her heart pounding louder than the hum of the ship's engines, and a smile touched her lips for the first time in years. She knew the path ahead would be difficult, that reuniting with him would bring challenges and dangers, but none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that he was alive, and she could see him, and perhaps, just perhaps, he could see her too. As she prepared to reveal herself, to cross the final distance between them, Alara felt something she had not felt in years: hope, pure, shining hope, brighter than any star she had ever seen. She had found him, and nothing, not the galaxy, not politics, not even time itself, could take this moment away from her. Alara's heart raced as she stayed hidden behind a cluster of metal crates, watching Ethan move among the settlers. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, strong, and careful in every motion, but there was a new, quiet authority about him, a calm confidence born from years of surviving alone in the outer colonies. He spoke to the settlers with patience, correcting mistakes, showing them how to repair machinery, and lending a hand wherever it was needed. Every small gesture reminded Alara why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. She wanted to step forward, to run into his arms, but something held her back. Years of separation had changed both of them. She did not know if he would recognize her, or if he would even trust her presence. War and time had left marks that she could not see, but she could feel them in the careful way he moved, the way he scanned the area for danger, and the way he occasionally glanced over his shoulder. Alara knew she had to be careful. For several hours, she observed from the shadows, memorizing his routines and watching him interact with the community. She saw him repair a broken water pump, teach a group of young humans how to defend themselves from wildlife, and quietly comfort a small child whose parents had been lost in the earlier conflicts. Each moment reinforced what she had always known: Ethan was remarkable, not just in courage, but in his kindness and his ability to inspire those around him. Night fell over the settlement, and the twin moons of the colony cast silver light across the rough landscape. Alara found a hidden vantage point on a cliff overlooking the settlement. From there, she could see Ethan tending a small fire in the center of the village. He was alone for a moment, his expression distant, as though lost in thought. Alara felt a lump in her throat. She longed to call out to him, but she forced herself to remain silent. She needed a plan, a careful approach, if she wanted to speak to him without frightening him or drawing unwanted attention. She remembered the stories he had told her of surviving in hostile environments, of adapting to challenges and observing before acting. Alara realized that she would need to use those same skills now. The settlement was full of eyes, not all friendly. Some outsiders might not welcome an alien's sudden appearance, and the risk of being noticed before she was ready was too high. She decided to wait until Ethan was alone. A small window of opportunity she would not waste. The hours passed slowly. Alara watched the settlement gradually fall silent, the fires dimming one by one, the settlers retreating to their modest homes. She remained on the cliff, moving carefully to stay hidden from anyone patrolling nearby. Her mind raced with memories of Ethan, the moments of laughter, the quiet conversations under alien skies, the promises they had made to each other. She let the memories guide her, giving her courage, giving her patience. Finally, the moment came. Ethan moved toward the edge of the settlement, checking the perimeter and scanning the horizon. He was alert, cautious, but not suspicious. Alara took a deep breath and began her careful descent from the cliff, keeping to shadows, moving slowly and deliberately. Every step brought her closer, and yet fear and excitement tangled together in her chest. What if he did not recognize her? What if he had changed too much? As she drew nearer, she noticed the medallion he wore around his neck, a small, worn piece that he had always carried. Seeing it made her heart leap. It was him. It had to be him. She quickened her pace, careful to remain unseen, and finally found a place just behind a large rock near the perimeter where she could reveal herself safely. She cleared her throat softly. "Ethan," she whispered, barely louder than the wind through the cliffs. Ethan froze instantly, his body tensing, and he slowly turned. The firelight reflected off his eyes, wide with disbelief. "Alara?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried through the night, full of shock, hope, and a flood of unspoken emotion. Alara stepped out from behind the rock, raising her hand slightly to show she meant no harm. "It's me," she said, her voice trembling. "It's really me." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Ethan studied her carefully, his eyes scanning every detail, as if trying to convince himself that she was real. Then, slowly, recognition dawned. His lips parted, and a sound of wonder escaped him. You're alive." Tears filled Alara's eyes. "I thought I had lost you," she said, her voice barely audible. "I thought you were gone." Ethan took a cautious step toward her, then stopped, unsure. "I thought I was dead," he admitted, his voice low and steady. "I survived, by chance, by help from others. I never thought I'd see you again." They were close now, separated only by a few steps. Yet the distance felt vast. Time had passed. Danger had shaped them. And yet, despite it all, the bond they had shared remained unbroken. They both reached out simultaneously, their hands trembling as they met. It was a touch filled with relief, longing, and the unspoken acknowledgement of everything they had endured. "I can't believe you're really here," Ethan whispered, his voice catching. "I've thought about you every day. I've wondered if you survived, if you even remembered me." Alara shook her head slightly, smiling through tears. "I never forgot. You were always in my heart." Even when I thought I had to move on, I never stopped hoping. They stood there in silence for a moment, letting the weight of their reunion settle around them. The night was calm, the only sounds the distant rustle of wind and the faint crackle of dying fires. For the first time in years, Alara felt safe, whole, and truly alive. But their reunion was not without danger. The settlement, though mostly peaceful, had outsiders who would not welcome the sudden appearance of an alien woman, and word of Ethan's presence had likely drawn attention. Alara knew they had to act carefully. They could not risk drawing anyone hostile to them, not now when their reunion had only just begun. Ethan, reading her expression, nodded. "We need to be careful," he said. "It's not just the distance between us. There are others who would see me captured, or worse. I've managed to stay hidden for a reason." Alara understood immediately. She had learned patience in her years as a diplomat, and now she would need that patience more than ever. "I'll follow your lead," she said. I had to see you first. I couldn't wait any longer." Together, they moved carefully through the shadows, finding a secluded place just outside the settlement where they could talk without fear. Ethan explained how he had survived the attack, the challenges he faced in the years after, and the small victories that had kept him going. Alara listened, her hand lightly resting on his arm, feeling the steady warmth of him and the reality of his survival. He, in turn, asked her about the years she had spent in the galaxy's political centers, about the choices she had made, and about the life she had tried to build without him. Alara spoke honestly, revealing her doubts, her grief, and the small moments of hope that had driven her to find him. They spoke into the night, their voices quiet but full of emotion, until the first rays of the colony's twin suns began to light the horizon. By the time morning arrived, they had made a plan. They would need to leave the settlement carefully, using the early hours before most people were awake. Alara would help Ethan navigate, and together, they would ensure that no one could threaten their reunion again. The years of separation had taught them both the value of patience, strategy, and trust. And now those lessons would guide them forward. As the suns rose, casting golden light over the rocky landscape, Alara looked at Ethan and felt a surge of emotion she could not put into words. He was alive. He was here. And now, together, they had a chance to reclaim what had been lost, to face the challenges of the galaxy, and to begin again. For the first time in years, Alara allowed herself to hope not just for survival, but for a future where they could be together, unbroken and united. The journey ahead would be difficult. Danger still lurked in the outer colonies, and the galaxy had not forgotten the human who had survived against all odds. But for this moment, in the quiet light of dawn, Alara and Ethan allowed themselves to simply exist together. And in that existence, there was a strength and a peace that neither of them had known for years. Alara and Ethan moved cautiously through the rocky terrain surrounding the settlement. Every step had to be deliberate. Though the early morning light gave them a sense of calm, Alara knew that danger could appear at any moment. The colonies at the edge of the galaxy were not just home to settlers, they were also places where opportunists, bounty hunters, and hostile factions lurked, always ready to take advantage of those who were unprepared. Yet, despite the tension, a sense of relief flowed between them. Ethan was alive, and they were together. Ethan led the way, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. "We need to keep moving," he said softly, his voice steady, almost commanding. "If anyone notices us leaving, it could draw attention. The settlement is not entirely safe for someone like you." Alara nodded, keeping close behind him. She felt the same determination in him that she had remembered, the same quiet bravery that had drawn her to him years ago. She also felt a new appreciation for the life he had built here, the small network of survivors and settlers he had quietly supported. He had become a part of this frontier world. And yet, for all his independence, he had never forgotten her. As they moved, Ethan explained more about the years he had survived. He had relied on his knowledge of mechanics and navigation to repair ships and equipment for the colonies, building trust and friendships with those who had lived through similar hardships. He had avoided major settlements and official records to keep himself hidden, knowing that someone might seek him out if his survival became known. Alara listened, absorbing every detail, feeling both pride and admiration. Ethan had not only survived, he had thrived, and he had done it quietly, without seeking recognition or reward. At one point, they paused near a small cliff overlooking a valley filled with jagged rocks and scattered settlements. Ethan knelt beside a small stream, checking the map of the surrounding area. "We can take this route," he said, pointing to a narrow canyon that would allow them to move without being seen from the main path. "It will take longer, but it's safer. I don't want anyone knowing you were here with me." Alara smiled faintly. "I trust your judgment," she said. She realized that in the years apart, both of them had changed. They were older, wiser, and more aware of the dangers that could come from the galaxy itself. And yet, their connection remained as strong as ever. A tether across time and distance that neither had allowed to break. As they followed the canyon path, a subtle tension grew in the air. The quiet of the morning was deceptive. Alara noticed tracks in the dirt, signs of movement that were too organized to belong to wild animals. She pointed them out to Ethan, who studied them carefully. "These are human tracks," he said quietly, "but not from the settlement. Someone has been here recently. We need to be careful." They moved even more cautiously, using the rocks as cover, and soon spotted a small group of armed humans in the distance. They were patrolling, seemingly unaware of Ethan and Alara's presence. Ethan motioned for her to stay low, and they waited until the group passed. The encounter reminded Alara that even though they had been reunited, the galaxy was not a safe place for their love. Threats still existed, and survival would require both caution and strategy. Eventually, they reached a hidden area known to Ethan, a small cave system where he had stored supplies and created a temporary shelter. It was modest, but secure, with enough space for both of them to rest and plan. Alara allowed herself a moment of relief as she stepped inside. For the first time since leaving her ship, she felt she could breathe. They were alone, together, and for now, safe. Sitting across from each other, they began to speak more openly. Ethan explained the challenges he had faced, the scarcity of resources, the conflicts with local factions, and the constant need to remain vigilant. He spoke not to boast, but to share the reality of his life. Alara listened, offering support and encouragement, realizing how much they had both endured. "I never stopped hoping you were alive," Alara admitted, her voice soft. "Even when the reports said you were gone. Even when everything seemed impossible. I believed in you." Ethan reached across the small space between them, taking her hand in his. "And I believed in you," he said quietly. "I thought about you every day. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, but the thought of seeing you again kept me moving forward. It gave me a reason to survive." Their hands remained entwined, a silent promise and reassurance. In the quiet of the cave, surrounded by the remnants of Ethan's life on the frontier, Alara felt a deep connection, a bond forged not just in love, but in endurance and resilience. They had both survived challenges that might have destroyed others. And now, together, they could face whatever lay ahead. Yet, the peace of the moment was short-lived. Outside, distant sounds reached their ears. Voices, machinery, and the faint but unmistakable hum of ships. Alara's instincts flared immediately. "Something's coming," she said, standing and moving to a vantage point at the cave entrance. Ethan followed quickly, scanning the horizon. "It's a small reconnaissance team," he said after a moment, his voice calm but tense. "They're looking for someone. If they find us..." He didn't need to finish the thought. They both knew the consequences could be dire. Alara's mind raced. They had to move quickly and quietly, using the terrain to their advantage. She recalled her training in diplomacy and strategy, and how she had learned to read situations and anticipate outcomes. Together, they formulated a plan. Ethan would create a small diversion, drawing the attention of the patrol, while Alara led them through a hidden path that would bypass the danger. The execution was tense but precise. Ethan used a small flare to mimic a signal from the settlement, drawing the patrol's attention and sending them on a false path. Meanwhile, Alara guided them through the narrow canyon and into a dense cluster of rocks and foliage. Every movement was careful, every step calculated. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, they reached a safer area, hidden from view and out of immediate danger. Breathing heavily, they paused to regain their composure. Alara looked at Ethan, admiration and love shining in her eyes. "You always know what to do," she said, a small smile breaking through her tension. Ethan smiled back, though the seriousness of the situation remained. "We've both survived this long," he said. "And together, we're stronger. That's what matters." They spent the next few hours discussing their next steps. Ethan shared information about local settlements, potential allies, and places where they could rest safely without drawing attention. Alara offered her knowledge of interstellar travel, diplomatic channels, and resources she could access from her world. Together, they began to plan not just for survival, but for a future where they could remain together, free from the threats that had kept them apart for so long. As night fell again, they found shelter in another hidden cave, smaller but secure. Sitting side by side, they allowed themselves a rare moment of intimacy, speaking softly about dreams, memories, and hopes for the future. Alara felt tears prick at her eyes, not from fear or loss, but from the overwhelming relief of finding Ethan alive and knowing that he felt the same way about her. For the first time since their reunion began, they allowed themselves to rest fully, knowing that together, they could face the challenges of the galaxy. The patrols, the factions, the dangers. They were real, but they no longer felt insurmountable. They had each other, and that made all the difference. Alara watched Ethan sleep for a moment, marveling at the resilience he had shown and the quiet strength that had guided him through so many years alone. She thought of the time they had lost, the hardships they had endured separately, and the future that now lay before them. Despite the dangers, despite the uncertainty, a profound sense of hope filled her heart. They had been given a second chance, and they would not squander it. As the twin moons rose over the horizon, casting a soft glow through the cave entrance, Alara felt a deep sense of peace. She knew the galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers, but with Ethan by her side, she felt capable of facing anything. Their reunion had not erased the past, nor the challenges that awaited them, but it had given them something far more powerful, the certainty that they were no longer alone. And in that certainty, they found courage, hope, and a love that had survived the impossible, stronger than any obstacle the galaxy could throw in their path. The morning light crept slowly over the horizon, bathing the rocky valley in soft gold. Alara and Ethan emerged from their hidden shelter, alert but determined. The dangers of the outer colonies still lurked nearby, yet neither hesitated. Their time together had been too brief, and now, with every step forward, they felt the weight of years apart begin to lift. Ethan led Alara to a small, secluded plateau, high enough to give them a clear view of the settlement below, but hidden enough to avoid prying eyes. "We need to decide what comes next," he said, his voice calm, yet edged with determination. "We can't stay here forever. People are watching. The galaxy doesn't forget a human who survived against all odds." Alara nodded, understanding the reality of his words. "I know," she said softly. "But whatever comes, we face it together." The bond between them had grown stronger in the weeks since their reunion. It was no longer just a spark of love or hope. It had become a partnership forged through struggle and patience. They had survived separate challenges for years, and now they had found each other again, stronger and wiser. That knowledge gave them courage, and it guided every decision they made. From their vantage point, they watched as the settlement began its daily routines. Small figures moved among the buildings, tending crops, repairing structures, and caring for children. Life went on despite the harsh conditions. and Ethan's influence was visible in the efficiency and resilience of the community. Alara felt a surge of pride for him. He had not merely survived, he had made a difference, quietly improving the lives of those around him. As they prepared to descend and continue their journey, Alara noticed movement at the edge of the plateau. A small group of armed figures approached, cautious, but determined. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and he subtly placed a hand on her shoulder. "They're not friendly," he said. "We need a plan." Alara felt a rush of adrenaline. She had faced danger before, in diplomatic missions and political conflicts. But this was different. These people were looking for trouble, and they would not stop for reason or negotiation. She took a deep breath and let her training guide her. "We can use the terrain," she suggested. "We move through the rocks and shadows. They'll follow, but we can control the path." Ethan nodded, trusting her judgment as much as she trusted his instincts. Together, they moved quickly and quietly, weaving through narrow passages and jagged rocks. The armed group followed at a distance, unaware of the traps and diversions the couple had prepared along the way. Every step required coordination and trust, and every movement strengthened the bond that had already been tested by years of separation. After several tense hours, they reached a secluded canyon far from the settlement. Here, the terrain was rugged and unpredictable, offering both protection and challenge. Ethan paused to catch his breath, his eyes scanning for any signs of pursuit. "We're safe for now," he said, "but we need a long-term solution. We can't keep running forever." Alara looked at him, seeing not just the survivor she had loved, but a partner who shared her courage and vision. "Then we make one," she said. "We find a place where humans and aliens can coexist safely. A place where we can live without fear, and where we can build a future together." Ethan smiled faintly, a mix of relief and hope. "I've thought about that," he admitted. "There are planets at the edge of explored space, unclaimed and wild. We could start there. We could make it work." The idea filled Alara with warmth. The galaxy was vast, and opportunities were everywhere for those brave enough to seize them. They spoke for hours, planning routes, gathering resources, and discussing the possibility of allies who might support their vision. For the first time since their reunion, they allowed themselves to dream freely, imagining a life where danger was a challenge, not a constant threat. As they rested near a small spring, Alara finally allowed herself to express the depth of her feelings. She took Ethan's hands in hers, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of relief, love, and awe. "Seeing you alive," she whispered, "it's more than I can put into words. I've waited so long for this moment, and now that you're here, I feel whole again." Ethan's gaze softened, and he gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I've waited too," he said quietly. "For years, I survived because I hoped I would see you again. I thought about you every day. Nothing else mattered as much as finding you again. You're my reason, Alara. You always have been." Alara felt tears well up, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. She leaned into him, and for a moment, the dangers of the galaxy seemed to vanish. The rocky canyon, the distant settlements, even the memory of years lost all faded away, leaving only the certainty of their connection. They spent the next days moving cautiously through uncharted regions, avoiding populated areas and staying hidden from those who might seek to interfere. Along the way, they discovered small communities of humans and aliens who lived on the edge of exploration. Struggling, but resilient, Ethan shared his knowledge of survival and mechanics, while Alara offered guidance and strategic insight. Together, they helped improve these communities, quietly building goodwill and earning trust. Through these efforts, their bond deepened. They learned to rely on each other completely, understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. Alara admired Ethan's adaptability and courage, while he respected her intelligence and foresight. Their love was no longer just a matter of the heart, it had become a partnership that could face the challenges of a vast and unpredictable galaxy. One evening, as they camped near a hidden grove, Alara looked up at the stars and felt a profound sense of peace. The galaxy was dangerous, full of uncertainty. But she no longer felt alone. Ethan was alive, by her side, and together they had already overcome so much. The hardships of the past no longer held them back. Instead, they fueled their determination to create a future that was theirs alone. Ethan noticed her gaze and followed it to the sky. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "But even the stars aren't as bright as this moment." Alara smiled, squeezing his hand. "No," she agreed. "And we won't let anything take this from us again. We survived the impossible to find each other. Now, nothing can break what we have." In the following days, they began searching for a suitable planet to call their own. They explored hidden star systems, mapping out territories unclaimed by any civilization. They considered resources, climate, and the ability to create a safe community for others like them. Every decision was guided by experience, love, and a vision of hope that had been missing from both their lives for too long. Finally, they discovered a lush, secluded world, untouched and fertile, with vast forests, clear rivers, and gentle hills. It was perfect not just as a place of safety, but as a foundation for the future they dreamed of. Standing on a hill overlooking the pristine landscape, Alara and Ethan held hands, feeling the weight of their journey, the challenges they had survived, and the promise of a life together. "We can start here," Ethan said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "We can build what we've always wanted. A place where humans and aliens can live together. Where hope and courage guide every choice." Alara nodded, her heart full. "And we will," she said. "Together, we can face anything. The galaxy may be vast and dangerous, but now we have each other. That's enough to overcome anything." As they stood there, the sun rising over the horizon, casting warm light across the land, Alara felt tears of happiness stream down her face. The years of fear, loss, and uncertainty were behind them. Ethan was alive, and their reunion had not only restored what they had lost, but given them the chance to create something greater, a future built on love, courage, and unity. They spent the evening exploring the new world, envisioning settlements, gardens, and safe havens for travelers and settlers. Their conversations were full of excitement and laughter, the first real joy they had shared in years. They were no longer survivors in isolation. They were pioneers, ready to shape their destiny and the destiny of those around them. Night fell, and the stars reflected in the rivers of the new world, casting a tranquil glow over the landscape. Alara and Ethan sat together, side by side, hands intertwined, hearts beating in unison. They had survived the impossible, reunited against all odds, and now faced a future of endless possibilities. For the first time in years, Alara allowed herself to feel completely safe, completely loved, and completely alive. Ethan's presence was a reminder that hope could survive even the darkest moments, and that love could endure across time, distance, and the vast reaches of space. As they watched the twin moons rise, casting silver light across the hills, Alara whispered softly, "I will never take this for granted. Not for a single moment." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "Neither will I," he replied. "We have each other, and that's all we need. Together, we can face anything. Together, we are unstoppable." And in that quiet moment, under the light of alien moons and distant stars, Alara and Ethan allowed themselves to dream freely, to hope boldly, and to love without fear. The galaxy was vast, but for them, it was no longer a place of uncertainty. It was a place of promise, adventure, and an enduring bond that had survived everything the universe had thrown their way. They had found each other again, and nothing could ever take that away.